What is AI native? Is any technology that relies on live data pipes that can make less brittle decisions compared to previous automation efforts.
Why did companies feel to kind of enhance the number of applications?
Most enterprises won't make that leap. They're too conservative.
Why has this conversation become relevant or super relevant today in the advent of AI and Gen AI and what will define 2025 agentic AI?
What generative AI made possible for anyone to tap into that power pretty quickly and very easily without much training. It was very intuitive. That's why ChatGPT took off the way it did.
The question between build and buy.
Most companies would tend to buy.
Who is the right vendor? What are the qualities that you should look for?
So that shift is going to happen.
Hello, welcome everyone to the next episode of the A Media House podcast Simulated Reality. Today we have with us a data and AI leader, Akshaya Murthy. Hi Akshaya, how are you doing today?
Wonderful to be on the podcast. Kashyap, thanks for having me.
As I was mentioning to you in our previous call, I think this topic that we're going to be discussing is very critical and vital in terms of some of the things that are being discussed, especially in the wake of Klarna moving away from Salesforce and Workday and trying to build something which is AI first technology. What are some of the conversations that you as a leader are having with your clients, and was there any follow-up dialogue after the big Klarna news?
Not yet, but I think it's good timing to talk about the whole AI native landscape and how it's going to impact enterprise technology as a whole. If you take a step back and look at what is AI native, essentially AI native is any technology that relies on live data pipes, some sort of intelligence that can make less brittle decisions compared to previous automation efforts. Get your solution, 80% solution at least, in a matter of seconds rather than hours or days. Okay, if we define that as a scope of an AI native solution. However it's powered, LLMs, ML, whatever it is, doesn't matter. The current application stack in the enterprise space is terrible. To say the least, right? Because it requires a lot of people to configure, manage, maintain, update. Every small thing means you're either building a new piece of code, or you're throwing people at the problem, or you're re-engineering the project or the process to make it work. Now, in the AI native realm, what happens is there is end-to-end automation. And what does it mean? Let me give you an example. Say you take digital marketing. Digital marketing begins with some sort of a concept of, I want to market my product, and this is my concept of who it should be marketed to, what the personas are, what messaging I send out. Then they create the campaign design, and it usually gets to an agency to design the visuals, video, audio, whatever. And then it gets vetted by humans. Then you have ad campaigns created, they get measured and then monetized. Okay. So you have here multiple human stakeholders, both internal and external. Now take a look at the AI native realm. What can I do? I can create hundreds of concepts of what I want to market to be very, very precise to exactly the persona or even the individual. So for example, Kashyap, say you like dogs, I can make sure my marketing campaign always has dogs in the stuff that I send out to you. Okay. So you can get really creative. Then I don't have to go to an agency. I can go from concept to design to actual end product in 5 seconds using Sora or Adobe Firefly or whatever one of those tools are. And I can create a brand campaign based on live data, on big data I have captured from data exchanges and our own data gathering efforts as a marketing company. Automatically convert you into a user by giving you very personalized discounts based on your income level, whatever it is, your zip code, and keep you for life. So you see the shift there. It's not just one or two enterprise applications that got disrupted, it's entire value chains. Okay, that's the shift in mindset. So I think Klarna is doing the right thing by saying these big ERP, CRM, HRM systems are very clunky, monolithic, require a lot of people to manage and maintain. We are not that kind of a company. Our operating model does not align with this. So let's build something that aligns with our operating model, which in turn aligns with our business strategy and our product strategy. So that's the context you have to take into account. My prediction is most enterprises won't make that leap. They're too conservative.
One of the questions that arises, right? See, yeah, the tech industry has always been about learning and unlearning, right? And obviously, Workday and Salesforce have scaled to the magnitude that they have scaled, primarily because there was a need in the market, right? Nobody
Correct.
would just buy something for the sake of it. I'm sure, I don't know what the pricing is on those, but I'm sure it's not cheap to buy like a CRM or an ERP system
Correct.
from. Why did we reach that stage where we kept on adding? Because one of the conversations that we had is that your effort right now is to kind of reduce the suite of products into products which is probably not, which has the similar application. This thing, why did companies feel to kind of enhance the number of applications, cater to one this thing? Probably there's
Mm.
slight difference in one process, or probably a company does something differently, they get inspired, it becomes whole another product instead of
Yeah.
just an add-on. Why? How walk me through this journey a little bit, because this world of enterprise softwares and the thought process behind the designing of it is something which is probably very black box to a lot of outside world.
The way IT infrastructure applications and ecosystems grow and they balloon, for example, at Zendesk, we use 40 applications to run finance. Okay. The reason why it ballooned to that is because one, if you want a consolidated application like an ERP, it's really, really expensive. And it's not available to every company at every growth stage. Okay.
Mhm.
So what happens is, say a company starts off and they're growing at 30-40% per year. They realize they need a billing system. They realize they need a GL system. They add those because they have to continue growing. And say that is at a $10 million revenue level.
Mhm.
And then they lose focus. They go to $100 million. Now they haven't changed the system to adapt to that particular mindset and growth rate and that level of criticality, and it sort of calcifies. Now a CIO comes along at a $500 million stage and says, oh, this is terrible, let's rip this out, let's put an ERP in place. And they look at the price tag saying $5 million per year. No, we're not going to do it. We're going to stick to this. Let's upgrade this platform and augment this with something else where we are missing features. Okay, that's how it evolves over time, and that calcification leads to a jumbled set of applications and a really bloated IT team. So that's what has gotten us to this, and it's always happened. From a SaaS perspective, the promise was don't have on-prem applications; it's going to reduce your cost. So SaaS it is. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry added a SaaS application. Anything new that could be done was taken into consideration and added to the stack. So there was not much consideration. It's also about the maturity of the organization at that level. Now, usually when the maturity comes to the billion and a half dollar stage of revenue, then they start thinking about, all right, we need to consolidate this into an ERP because we have now 40 different data models
Mm.
that we have to make work with each other. So there's a bunch of application development, there's a bunch of interface development, API development that goes into it. So let's get rid of all that. Let's transform, go into an ERP system, one data model, one workflow, all in one. And at that stage, again, it creates its own issues because an ERP is not easy to maintain. You got to overhaul your IT people and infrastructure, etc. It's very expensive and time consuming. Um, and also, you shouldn't forget the people. When transformations happen, people are not going to stick around because they know their jobs are at stake.
Mm.
That's why transformations fail, because people with legacy knowledge of how the company works, how the products work, leave because they know they don't have a play 2 years down the line.
Mm.
So all these factors lead to a jumbled mess, and I think AI native can save that. Uh, let's hope. That's the promise, at least.
One of the things is what you are describing in terms of the growth, right? So as the company grows, you need processes. To set processes, you hire IRPs and all of that. But when it grows too much, it becomes bureaucracy.
Yeah,
Is that the correct
yeah,
simplification?
yeah. You've put it very succinctly and very well.
Okay. So now I think technology in general has played, has always played a good leveler, right? And not just in terms of affordability of different this thing. And it's not just in enterprise SaaS, right? Even any field you take. I follow sports very closely. I believe that democratization of technology will make an even playing field for a lot of teams which do not cannot afford really big players, right? Like this thing. Similarly, in a business context, if you are trying to grow and you're trying to hire the services of ERP tools, or these things, I think technology will always try to play a
Mhm.
leveler field. Why has this conversation become relevant or super relevant today, in the advent of AI and Gen AI and
Yeah.
what will define 2025 agentic AI? But why was this always not a conversation, or was this a conversation but technology before was not able to do that? Is AI more powerful in achieving this objective of reducing the overload?
AI as a general term has been around for a very long time. Companies have applied AI. We call it machine learning. A lot of companies use data science and machine learning, etc. So that was a domain of operation just 2 years ago. What generative AI made possible is for anyone to tap into that power pretty quickly and very easily without much training. It was very intuitive. That's why ChatGPT took off the way it did. The fastest adopted technology in humankind's history. Now, if you look at what AI brings to the table, it's not just about incremental changes, it's paradigm changes, right? It's quantum changes that you could make with your product, with your offering, with your service, etc. For example, there's this company, I may be getting it wrong, Viscom, for industrial design. So you can go from sketch to concept in 20 seconds. Try that with the legacy products. Okay, so given that kind of power and power disparity between legacy versus AI, what enterprises quickly realize is we got to put AI in all our applications.
Mm.
Okay, so let's call that a business model change. Okay,
Okay.
where we were selling seats, now we won't sell seats. We'll probably sell per concept you create. For the value we have added to your ecosystem, you pay us. Okay, that's a business model change. Let's call it value creation. What is the value you're providing to your customers? Now that necessitates how we capture value. So that shift, the value capture shifted from per seat to per outcome.
Mm.
Okay. So what that meant is on the back end, your operating model has changed because now you can scale your products infinitely, potentially. You can add new features on a daily basis because you can prototype. You can do this really easily. Um, and if you're going for scale, what happens is the scope of your operations change. The way you recognize revenue changes, the way you do your operations changes, the way you handle customer support changes because it's a completely new set of ways of doing things. And AI applications quite necessarily give back a lot of data in terms of insights, in terms of usage, etc. So you have to transform your organizations to learn from that data. So this is the context. There's a business model change, there's an operating model change, and in a very big way.
Mm.
So if you take ERPs into consideration, if you take HRM systems, they cannot handle this.
Mm.
They cannot handle this in the state it is today. Forget 5 years from now, who knows what the heck it's going to look like. And legacy players, what they've done is in a hurry to get into the AI game, what they've added is let's add a summarization feature here. Let's add a feature to review a resume there. which is not a business model shift, right?
Mm,
So customers are realizing, enterprises who consume applications like Klarna are realizing this will not set us up for success. We
mhm,
will be behind 2, 3, 5 years if we do this. So we need to go the AI native route.
mm,
So that's the shift in mindset. Again, not all CIOs are thinking that far ahead. These are really, really hard to pull off because these are complete strategy changes. So in the intermediary term, what they're doing is, if I may call it, an intelligent, automated, integrated AI layer on top of everything.
mhm,
So, for example, enterprise search, bringing all data together, making it accessible, putting all their data on data lakes like Snowflake or Databricks that will allow for all your people to become analysts and look at the data in a new light and analyze and make better product and operations decisions. So these are the two paradigms.
mm,
You could do AI native, very hard, needs the board and the C-suite to say, we are sticking with this. This is a bet we are taking, all in. No
mm,
questions asked. We live or die by AI. The second set, what they're saying is, we can't live or die by AI. We have legacy customers who rely on us to run their business. So let's see what we can do. Very, very similar to electric vehicle versus ICE vehicle manufacturers and how they have to maintain both petrol, diesel, and electric vehicles, whereas electric vehicles just go one way. But eventually, I think there'll be a massive consolidation of legacy players because they won't be able to compete.
mm.
Um, and those who do come out the other side will be completely different companies compared to what they're today.
Yeah, several thoughts, right, to what you mentioned. So my first question to you is, obviously these legacy players, right? You take the Salesforce and the Workdays of today. Uh, they know this, like they're not. They have tests, survived the test of time. They have scaled anything, so they're not going to be. They're not blindsided by this. There's something that they're probably
Mhm.
stuck. Where do you see these businesses moving in today's world? What are some of the executive decisions do you anticipate being taken at their level in terms of consolidation? Is one aspect which you are doing for Zendesk, or probably AI native approach, which is a completely, or I call it AI first approach, right? Like AI first
Correct.
approach, you take AI first and build work processes around it, that kind of thing. Where do you see them going, and what is the decision making?
I think the really smart players are looking at re-architecting their solutions. Start from a blank sheet of paper
Mm,
and build the solution brand new. That's what they're looking at. And Oracle's doing that with their end-to-end AI, for example.
mm,
Um, but for most legacy players, that is very hard. For example, financial industry players, they cannot re-architect because there are so many regulations to get through, etc. So maybe those will survive for a while. Um, but those enterprises that do not re-architect face a pretty difficult future, is what I'm suggesting. And a lot of the smaller players in the ERP space will probably be more nimble. It's the larger players who have to deal with 100,000 employees, 50,000 customers that they have to deal with, offering a brand new solution saying, hey, you know what, throw everything you have out the window, here, use this. That's not an easy sell. So they have to balance the capex associated with this new development versus the opex associated with managing, migrating, and sunsetting their existing products. I grew up with the cloud at Oracle, where we were transitioning from on-prem to OCI,
mm,
Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, and I think they did a masterful job at transitioning customers along with their technology. Not everyone's going to be able to do that. So to answer the question of what strategic decisions have to be taken at the board level, there has to be a commitment saying no matter what, this is the minimum investment we'll have in AI going forward, and we will stand by you in your transition.
mm,
One good example is what Citi is doing. The CTO and the CEO are fully committed. It was initially going to cost $2 billion. It's going to cost more than $2 billion beyond that. Fine, they're in it for the long term. So that kind of steady approach is one, and 100% necessary. Second, you need the right leadership, and the right leadership that understands this new technology. What is data science? What is machine learning? What does it hold for me and my company in terms of values and in terms of possibilities for the future? Unless the leadership layer and one level down fully understands it, even if the manager, senior manager, director, those layers understand and are at the forefront because they usually tend to be younger, uh, there's not going to be any movement because there's a disconnect of buy-in between the executive layer and the execution layer, right? So I think that is step two, that you have a C-suite, you have an executive layer that is fully immersed in what AI is and what the technology is, and get technical with it. Okay, if not, get people to do that for you or replace that layer to make it go in that direction. So those are two strategic decisions. And three, for the operational layer, uh, you need to reskill your workforce as well. The operational layer is doing the work. That means you have to set expectations that your performance objectives change uh, in the AI realm to what is relevant to AI. You're no longer configuration experts or button pushers, but you all are analysts, you all are programmers, you have the tools to do this. And once you make that happen, I think the enterprise will be primed to switch. Till then, it's going to be really, really hard because there's going to be massive miscommunication and a misalignment of
I was
values and objectives.
I personally believe from the conversations I'm hearing, this is inevitable. Everybody will move to an AI native slash
Mhm.
AI first approaches in terms of this thing, and many people, many companies will follow Klarna's suit. Let's talk about those transitionary challenges and what the uphill battle that they are going to face. What are some of the challenges they will face while going through that transition? That is one. And the second part is, let's say for someone who's starting out, like not a really big company, let's say like 5,000 people company, who are much more, it's much more accessible to kind of
Mm.
reach out to uh, function heads and set processes again.
Yep,
uh, Despite that, there will be challenges. It's not going to be like,
correct.
right, because the world has functioned in a way. It has, right? Now it is changing drastically. So, but that is there. Not that companies will not adopt. Everybody has to adapt. If they, the companies will not adapt. They will. Everybody has to adapt. So, two sets of different challenges. From your perspective, what are some of these challenges that you see?
From an internal challenge perspective, there's always this pressure to maintain status quo, right? Say, let's take two scenarios. One, very large enterprise. You have layers and layers of management. So, as you call it rightly, bureaucracy. How do you overcome that bureaucracy and drive change? It's really hard because you have to massage the messaging to go from one layer to another, and the messaging is lost at the end of the day from a value proposition because there's no space for radical thought in a very large enterprise because you're being a squeaky wheel at that point. But there are some enterprises that work well. In the second example of say 5,000 odd employees, if they're already cloud native, that is, they run on SaaS, they don't have any on-prem, they don't have a lot of the baggage that the larger enterprises have. So they could potentially transition quicker because you've already done it once. You already moved from on-prem to cloud. You already know what the transition looks like and the transformation looks like. The challenges still lie in I have to, for example, let me give an example. We recently moved we consolidated all our payroll providers globally. We had about 14. We came down to one. That itself is challenging because you have to convince people that, look, this is not something radical that will destroy your job. It is something that you'll have to adapt to. and it's going to make processes better. But it's a payroll system. So you are not only paying for the SaaS platform while it's being implemented, you also have to run it in parallel for a year, year and a half, because you got to pay people. You got to pay people the right money. So this is double cost associated with any transformation. So that's one. Budget is one constraint. Two, as I mentioned, people don't stick around. The moment they hear transformation, that they hear, my job is shaky. Okay. And a lot of people, it's organizational inertia. You don't want to learn new things. You hope to get by doing your job for at least say quarter of the population within a company. So if you don't want to learn new things, you got to move to a place where you're comfortable with the skill sets you have. The remaining company employees will move on with newer skill sets. So that churn eliminates a lot of institutional knowledge. And one thing you'll see very, very frequently in all types and all sizes of enterprise, process documentation does not exist. So when you're doing the transformation, you have no idea how the damn process works. So you have to invest more into consultants, into process mining and mapping tools to first of all understand what the heck is going on, which you have to transition to the new technology layer. Okay, those are three. Then four, there's the external pressure. All the changes that you're making aren't free of charge in terms of disrupting the customer experience. You should not ideally disrupt the customer experience because you want to change your business model. Customer doesn't care. They want to continue using the software or the platform without any glitches. So that's another pressure. The fourth pressure, especially if your company has a lot of debt, if you're a publicly listed company, is financial results. That's one of the biggest downer to any transformation effort because, say, we want to move to an ERP solution, even a company as big as Zendesk, it's going to cost us $10 million. That's not chump change. Plus, you're paying for all those SaaS applications while the transition is happening. So it's an additional 10 million. Add a 25% extra to it as buffer. So that's 12, $13 million. And it's going to take 2 years. Are people interested in doing their day job and doing this work? Probably not. You can hire an external consultant. Are they going to do a good job? Maybe. So all these uncertainties are the bottlenecks from transition perspective. Now, talking about AI, how many truly understand AI and the possibilities with it? The vendors selling you the stuff are selling the old stuff. Plus, they have a vested interest in selling the old stuff because they get kickbacks, right? If you go to a partner, if you go to an ISV, if you go to a service provider, they're going to sell particular platforms. They're not going to say, oh, there's this new shiny thing, take this, because they don't want to take a risk. They know they can sell the old one. So all these challenges, when they come through, makes it really, really hard for decision making. And that drags along the status quo.
See, larger and companies have always adopted, right? Like it's not like the first uphill battle in terms of transitions. It may not, maybe technology, processes, business operations, everybody has done. So what's a good way of, let's talk about what's a good way of doing it, right? You're
Yeah,
working very closely. You mentioned about some of the things that you are working on previously, right? You are trying to consolidate a lot of your enterprise suite into this. But at the same time, one thing is, as you mentioned, is your, for example, even Zendesk salespeople will now have to kind of convince newer clients.
correct.
And all. So that mindset, from a vendor perspective, that mindset also has to change. But probably that's a whole another conversation. Probably we can set up another podcast for it. But from a large enterprise perspective, let's take one example. Probably instead of talking, an overview, let's take CRMs, for example, right? Or let's take a few work processes together, right? Like CRMs or ERPs, and then
Hmm.
probably HR or ticketing, wherever you have to raise tickets, right? Like
Hmm.
those kind of things. Probably these two, three suites, if we can take together. Walk us through a rough framework if you have in your head, right? Like what are some of the first step?
Yeah.
What is step one? What is step two? What is step three? right? And help large enterprises, enlighten them in terms of how to kind of go about it.
I mean, large enterprises have made it past the internet revolution and multiple disruptions. I agree, but it's come at a great cost uh, financially. They've survived, but very few have survived very well. Just look at IBM, for example, not doing as well as it was 20 years ago with the technology they were building. Um, to answer your question on what framework can we use, first and foremost piece, as I mentioned, is the executive layer and the board has to be appraised on the possibilities of the situation, and they have to be educated about this new technology because it's drastically new. And in any company, what will happen is you will have 10% of the talent that is so interested in exploring new technologies and making it happen. Bring those people together because that's where the new ideas are going to come from.
Mm.
Uh, and we've done that pretty well at Zendesk. We are constantly scouting for folks who are interested in AI and asking for ideas. What can we do here? What can we do there? One of the initiatives we've launched is called Zenovate, where anyone can uh, give feedback and ideas on what to do with AI. It can be on product, it can be on operations, it can be anything, no holds barred. And you get an opportunity to take a shot, demonstrate that this can be done. So that gives confidence to the employees and leadership that we are moving in the right direction. And you start to build that momentum and that enthusiasm towards a new technology. That's the first thing. You have to build that enthusiasm. Second, when you start building out these new POCs or proofs of concepts, um, keep a constant flow of storytelling going in all at all levels and all hierarchies. Of course, you'll have to have your buy-in from your boss and your boss's boss, etc. But we have been fortunate that there's been a push top down as well as bottom up to explore AI, both on the product side and as well as on the operation side. So that's a commitment they have to make that we are going to listen to voices that talk about this new technology. And when you do the POC, you have to have the promise that if this POC works, you're going to scale it to the entire company. That'll give the confidence that this is not just lip service, but the company is serious about moving in this new direction. One thing we have done is there are these pockets of innovation in every function. Every quarter, we are trying to bring together those stories called the innovation update, and it goes to the executive staff saying, look what marketing is doing, look what finance is doing, look what HR is doing. So it gives them a glimpse or a view into, okay, this is how operations is changing, and this is how it's going to impact our revenue model, our cost model. Let's act appropriately. Okay, so those are some changes on the human side. On the wholesale technology front, there has to be a foot down on what are we going to change. It's not a matter of are we going to do it. It's a matter of if. And given the paradigm that everything has to change on the operations front because it's going to change the entire value chain, the question is, how do we sequence it? What's the most important? It's not about priority. It's everything is priority because you have to move forward in that direction very quickly. Sequencing should be squarely aligned with your business strategy, squarely aligned with what your company wants to do with respect to the value capture part of it, as well as value creation. So if you put that together, I think over a 2-year period, you can flip a company around to be AI first. But that number one piece is commitment. Once you have that, I think everything else will fall into place.
So my last question to you would be in this regards. I don't think companies will be able to build this entirely. They have to buy some, right?
Correct.
The question between build and buy. Probably Silicon Valley companies like DoorDash and Target, they like to build everything internally, and that they might, they have built their teams around that. But legacy companies
Mhm.
probably might struggle a little bit around. What's your guidance on reaching out to the right vendors, right? Who is the right vendor? What are the qualities that you should look for? Do they move more from product to services? Some advice on that one probably will be really helpful.
Well, choosing vendors is a hard thing to do. Legacy software or not, and the procurement function is probably the most underrated function in any organization because they help move this stuff along. Uh, but from a guidance perspective, every company is going to be different, right? From a business model standpoint, if you want to go the services route, your technology stack is going to be completely different versus the product route. Building is an art form,
Yeah.
and what particularly has been proven again and again in business studies and research has been that if that whatever you're building is not part of your core strategy, don't do it because you're going to do a half-assed job at it. So your most company would tend to buy. Now, for engineering rich companies like Klarna, OpenAI, etc., they're going to build it because they have the engineering talent to do that. But the next shift that is probably going to show up, and this conversation has already begun in VC circles and private equity circles, is that platforms that build entire platforms, say a souped up version of ChatGPT, where I can put in a prompt saying, build me an ARP system. I have 5,000 employees. I have operations in these 20 countries, and this is my revenue. This is my cost base. It'll build you an ERP system. So that shift is going to happen at some point where all the legacy ERP providers probably won't survive if that comes to fruition, if you can build your own software. Now, you're talking about moving towards an AI operating system for the company where everything is under one roof, everything is yours, and everything is provided by one vendor. So that may happen, and that comes with a big risk of vendor lock-in. It's already happening with LLMs because there are only a couple of good LLM vendors, reliable vendors. So the build versus buy really may shift over the next 5 years. But right now, if you want to buy, you'll have to gamble because the AI native companies are small. They may go bust. You'll have to put your faith. One way we've gotten around the issue is by making investments in the products that we buy through our Zendesk Ventures arm. That everybody cannot do. You got to have money to do that. Two, having a fallback plan that, okay, if the vendor goes out of business, do I get the source code to keep running? And we've had those conversations with a couple of vendors. And I think that's going to mature out as these companies grow and become bigger over the next 5-10 years. But companies cannot wait. They have to make the decision now, even if it means just to learn how to manage and operate AI systems. Just learn from that experience, and you can always fall back to legacy processes if it doesn't work out. So that's where POCs help and vet the companies. So I know it's a nebulous answer, but that's where we are today. It's going to get better as we move forward.
Akshaya, this was a lot of fun conversation, very forward thinking, and I'm very sure that it's going to add a lot of value to our audience, especially senior leaders who are working in this space. And I don't think anybody is taking up data and IT roles separately anymore. They are going to be working
Correct.
together very closely. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how things unfold. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on the podcast. I really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed the conversation. Looking forward to future conversations.